A crippled German submarine was sinking in the middle of the Atlantic, and the safest thing the Americans could do was destroy it. Instead, a small group of sailors did the unthinkable. They jumped onto the dying submarine while seawater rushed inside and the crew had only minutes to escape. What they found inside that U-boat would quietly change the war in the Atlantic, and for months, no one was allowed to talk about it. June 1944. The Atlantic Ocean had become one of the most dangerous battlefields of World War II. Across thousands of miles of open water, Allied convoys carried the supplies that kept Britain alive: fuel, ammunition, food, and soldiers preparing for the invasion of Europe. Protecting those convoys were dozens of escort ships, destroyers, corvettes, and destroyer escorts constantly scanning the ocean for one invisible threat: German U-boats. The submarines of Germany's Atlantic fleet had already sunk hundreds of Allied ships since the beginning of the war. Their strategy was simple and deadly: attack convoys without warning, disappear beneath the waves, and strike again somewhere else days later. For the sailors protecting Allied shipping routes, every calm stretch of ocean could hide danger. On one June morning, an American destroyer escort was patrolling the Atlantic as part of a convoy screen. The crew had been at sea for days, following a routine that had become painfully familiar: sonar sweeps, lookout reports, and endless tension. Then the sonar operator heard something. A faint metallic echo moving beneath the surface. The call went out across the ship. Possible submarine contact. Instantly the calm routine disappeared. The escort ship turned sharply, engines roaring as it moved to intercept the target. Crew members rushed to battle stations while the sonar team tracked the moving object beneath the waves. The echo was clear now. A submarine. Within minutes, the American ship launched its attack. Depth charges rolled into the sea one after another, exploding in powerful underwater blasts designed to crush a submarine's hull. Each detonation shook the ocean as columns of water erupted behind the escort ship. Then something unexpected happened. Oil began spreading across the surface. Debris floated up from below. The sonar contact stopped moving. Moments later, the damaged submarine broke through the surface of the Atlantic. The German U-boat appeared suddenly from the waves, its hull scarred and smoking from the explosions below. Hatches opened as German sailors rushed onto the deck, many of them jumping into the cold water. From the bridge of the American escort ship, officers watched the scene carefully. The submarine was clearly dying. Water was already flooding its compartments, and the vessel slowly began circling in the ocean, a sign that its crew had lost control. Normally, the next step was simple: destroy the submarine before the enemy crew could scuttle it and send everything inside to the bottom of the sea. But something about the situation made the American officers hesitate. If the submarine sank now, everything inside it would disappear forever. Navigation charts, communication codes, Enigma materials, information that could reveal how Germany's deadly submarine fleet operated across the Atlantic. For a brief moment, the officers on the American ship realized they might be looking at something incredibly rare. A German submarine, still floating. And possibly still full of secrets. But there was a problem. The submarine was sinking fast. If anyone wanted to search it, they had only minutes. And boarding a damaged enemy submarine in the middle of the ocean was one of the most dangerous things sailors could attempt during the war. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then one officer finally said the words that would turn the situation into one of the most daring naval operations of the entire war. "We're going to board her." Within minutes, a small group of American sailors prepared for one of the most dangerous missions imaginable. The damaged submarine was still drifting in the water, its hull low in the Atlantic as seawater continued pouring through damaged compartments. No one knew if the Germans had set demolition charges before abandoning the vessel. If they had, the submarine could explode at any moment. But if the Americans waited too long, it would simply sink. A small motor whaleboat was lowered from the side of the escort ship. Inside it climbed several volunteers from the crew, men who understood exactly how risky the mission was. Among them was a young officer tasked with leading the boarding party. His orders were simple but urgent: get inside the submarine, find anything valuable for intelligence, and get out before the vessel disappeared beneath the surface. The boat's engine roared to life. As it sped across the water, the submarine looked even more unstable than before. The vessel was slowly turning in a wide circle, smoke drifting from the conning tower. The deck was wet and tilted slightly toward the stern. German sailors were still floating in the water nearby, clinging to life jackets and debris while American sailors watched them carefully. When the whaleboat reached the submarine, the boarding team had to move fast. Timing the waves carefully, one sailor grabbed part of the submarine's outer railing and pulled himself up. Another followed immediately behind him. Within seconds, the Americans were standing on the deck of a German U-boat in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. The metal beneath their boots was hot, scarred from the depth charge explosions. And the submarine was still slowly sinking. One of the sailors forced open the hatch leading inside the conning tower. A rush of humid air escaped from the interior, carrying the smell of oil, machinery, and seawater. Inside, the submarine was dimly lit and partially flooded. Water was already pooling across the metal floor plates as the Americans climbed down into the narrow passageway. Pipes, valves, and electrical panels lined the cramped walls of the vessel. The crew moved quickly. Every second mattered. Some sailors began searching the control room, opening cabinets and gathering charts, notebooks, and communication logs scattered across the navigation table. Others checked nearby compartments, looking for codebooks or any equipment that might reveal how German submarines operated. But the deeper they moved into the submarine, the clearer the situation became. Water was rising. Some of the valves had been opened deliberately, a last action by the German crew to ensure the submarine would sink. If the Americans didn't leave soon, the U-boat could take them down with it. Then one sailor opened a metal cabinet near the radio station. Inside were several sealed containers and stacks of documents carefully protected from water. The discovery made everyone stop. Because if these were what they appeared to be, the boarding team had just found something extremely valuable. Something naval intelligence had been desperately trying to obtain for years. For a moment, the sailors stared at the containers in silence. They already understood what they might be looking at. Carefully sealed metal boxes, protected documents, equipment placed near the submarine's radio station. This was exactly where the most sensitive materials were usually kept aboard a German U-boat. Codebooks, signal instructions, communication procedures used by the submarine fleet across the Atlantic. The kind of intelligence Allied commanders had spent years trying to capture. But there was no time to celebrate. One of the sailors shouted from the passageway. "The water's rising." Seawater was now flowing steadily through the lower compartments of the submarine. Somewhere deeper in the vessel, valves had been opened completely. The Germans had done their job well. They had made sure the submarine would sink. The boarding officer made a quick decision. "Take everything we can carry." The sailors moved with urgency. Documents were stuffed into bags. Charts were rolled up. Metal containers were passed quickly from one man to another as they climbed back toward the conning tower. The submarine shifted again beneath their feet. Outside, the ocean slapped against the hull as the vessel settled lower into the water. Back on the American escort ship, sailors watched through binoculars, tense and silent. From a distance, the scene looked incredibly dangerous, their shipmates disappearing inside a dying enemy submarine while the Atlantic slowly swallowed it. Minutes passed. Too many minutes. Then movement appeared at the hatch. One by one, the boarding party climbed back onto the deck of the submarine, carrying bundles of documents and equipment. They waved urgently toward the whaleboat waiting nearby. The transfer had to happen quickly. If the submarine suddenly slipped beneath the surface, the men on deck might not have time to escape. The first bags were tossed into the boat. Then the metal containers. Finally, the sailors themselves climbed down one after another. The moment the last man jumped aboard, the coxswain pushed the engine forward. The whaleboat pulled away from the submarine as fast as it could. Behind them, the abandoned U-boat continued its slow descent into the Atlantic. Within minutes, the bow dipped sharply. Water rushed across the deck, pouring through the open hatch. Then the submarine slipped beneath the surface. Gone. The ocean closed above it, leaving only a circle of bubbles and floating debris. But by then, the Americans were already racing back toward their ship. And in the bottom of their small boat were documents and equipment that might reveal secrets of Germany's submarine war, secrets that could help protect hundreds of Allied ships still crossing the Atlantic. When the whaleboat finally reached the American escort ship, the crew pulled the boarding team aboard as quickly as possible. The sailors were soaked with seawater and oil from the submarine, but no one paid attention to that. Every pair of hands immediately focused on the bags and containers the men had carried back from the U-boat. Officers gathered on the deck as the materials were opened carefully. Inside were navigation charts, signal logs, and several sets of German naval documents. Some pages were covered in coded instructions used by submarine commanders when communicating with headquarters and other U-boats across the Atlantic. For the officers aboard the ship, the significance was clear almost immediately. This was exactly the kind of intelligence Allied Naval Command had been desperate to obtain. The materials were secured and sent under heavy guard once the ship returned to port. From there, they were delivered to intelligence specialists who spent days studying every page, every note, every technical detail recovered from the submarine. What they discovered helped build a clearer picture of how German U-boats organized their patrol routes, how they coordinated attacks on convoys, and how they transmitted messages across thousands of miles of ocean. Even small pieces of information could mean the difference between a convoy sailing safely to Europe or disappearing beneath the waves. But the operation itself quickly became a secret. The sailors who had boarded the submarine were instructed not to discuss what had happened. Official reports about the incident were limited, and the captured intelligence was quietly distributed only among a small circle of naval commanders and code specialists. For months, almost no one outside those circles knew that American sailors had actually boarded a German submarine in the middle of the Atlantic while it was sinking. Yet the impact of the mission quietly spread through the Allied naval war effort. Convoys became harder for German submarines to surprise. Escort ships improved the way they hunted U-boats beneath the ocean. Gradually, the balance in the Battle of the Atlantic began to shift. The submarine itself had disappeared forever beneath the waves. But the knowledge recovered from inside it continued to help Allied forces protect the ships that carried the supplies, soldiers, and weapons needed to finish the war in Europe. And it all began with a decision that lasted only a few seconds. Instead of destroying a dying enemy submarine, a handful of sailors chose to risk everything and climb aboard.